Good day, everyone. Manuel from Palo Alto Networks. Today we're going to be demonstrating the configuration for GlobalProtect in clientless and full VPN capability. Today we're going to demonstrate the clientless configuration. As you can see here, the agenda for today for clientless. So we're going to make two videos, the first one being the clientless video and a follow-up video demonstrating the full VPN capabilities as well as the full VPN configuration. Our diagram today, we're going to demonstrate this configuration with a Windows 10 system. On the untrusted side of the firewall itself, we're running a VM series. Our host is the 55.130. Our untrusted gateway is 55.20. Our trusted or internal gateway is the 45.20. Additionally, we have on the internal running a web server so we can demonstrate connectivity both to the trusted and out into the internet from clientless and full VPN. Okay, let's get started. Just as we can see here, we're running the entire configuration or the entire lab on VMware Fusion, and we're running the system here, the PA VM series Lite. It's a VM50 license with the 9.1 code running currently. And for the GlobalProtect agent, we have the 5.1. Both of these have been released in the last 4 days from the publish of this video itself. So let's get started now. Usually I like to work from right to left in providing the configurations. So the first things first, as we go back to our agenda, we're going to create some users, some user groups. Our password is going to be something just simple. All right, we're going to create two users here. So we have GP user 1 and GP user 2. And the reason we're actually creating two different users is because we're going to demonstrate two different groups, an admin group and just a regular user group. So you can see how to set up the different profiles for each of them. As you can see here, we have two groups here, GP admin, GP users, and we assign GP user 1 and GP user 2, one each. So we're working in the device tab. We actually created the users and the user group. Now we're going to create the self-signed certificate. If you have the ability to import a valid certificate or you have your own PKI infrastructure, definitely you can do that as well. But here we're going to actually leverage a self-signed certificate for our GP configuration and GP access. We're going to assign the IP address of the external interface or the public facing interface. We're going to go ahead and extend it out to 1024 days. And we're going to plug in an attribute here. We're going to make this a certificate authority, self-signed. And we'll generate our certificate here. And now we'll create a TLS profile. and assign that cert to this profile. We're going to max out to TLS version 1.2 and above. We're going to say OK. And now we have actually completed our second step here where we actually created a self-signed certificate. Now what we're going to do, we're going to create an authentication profile and then set it up for an authentication sequence. The reason we want to set up an authentication profile is because we want to be able to leverage an authentication method to our GlobalProtect configuration. So here we'll say we're going to leverage the local database, and we're going to assign the groups that were created, GP admin, GP users, and number of failed attempts. It's always a good idea to add a number of failed attempts and maybe a lockout period to your preference. Here I've actually assigned 5 failed attempts, then you're locked out for 15 minutes. And now we'll create a sequence. The purpose of a sequence, in the event that you do have multiple authentication profiles, such as a radius, a local Active Directory, and you want to leverage radius, Active Directory, TACACS, or even your local database like we're doing here, you can actually set up multiple authentication methods. So there is either a fallback or just a different place for the service to actually look for authentication. Okay, and now we're pretty much done with the device tab itself. So we've completed these tasks here. Now we're going to actually go into the network tab and create the zone, the interfaces, DNS proxy, and follow through with some of the GlobalProtect configurations. So let's go to network. First things first, we're going to create a tunnel. We're going to make this the .1. We're going to assign it to the default router. And here we don't have a zone, so we're going to actually create a zone right here. And we're going to name it L3 dash VPN dash CL. CL for clientless. And we'll say OK. We're going to leave the IPv4 blank, IPv6 blank, and we're not going to attach any management profiles to this or adjust any of the MTUs. So we'll say OK here. If we go down to zones, we'll actually see the zone that we created, the L3 VPN CL for clientless. We'll now move down to the DNS proxy. So the DNS proxy itself, it's already been created and enabled. So I named it default DNS proxy, but we're going to show some of the configurations in here. And I have it set up to forward any DNS request to the 192.168.55.2, which if you're running VMware Fusion, your .2 is the local interface for your Fusion when you actually set this up. The only thing we're going to do here is we're going to adjust this, and we're going to add our tunnel group to be able to use that proxy as well. So from this configuration, you can see that ETH1.2 and 1.3 and tunnel.1 have access to this DNS proxy. Part of DNS proxy is you're also able to redirect domain rules here. As you can see, anything with star.pan, lib, which stands for lab-in-a-box.local, I want you to send it to this local Active Directory or this DNS server. So we're going to leave that alone. If you have static entries that you want to apply to this DNS proxy as well, because this is also a caching DNS server that the Palo Alto firewall runs. It has caching capabilities, and I'm going to show you that now. You could actually input some of the static entries here. In your advanced tab, you could see that you can have it at caching, and also you can manipulate some of the time to live intervals as well. So now that we added that tunnel interface, we'll say OK. Now we're going to drop down to the clientless apps. We're just going to add a couple of apps here, right? For the first app we're going to add is going to be Google. We'll say OK. And then we're going to add our internal web server. So we'll just so we added that. And now we're going to create two groups here. We're going to create a GP admin apps. And here we'll add Google and our internal web server. And then we'll create another group. And we'll just add Google only. And I'll show you what these look like and why we're building them out. So now we'll go to the portal and we'll add here in the portal the interface is going to be the external interface. We're going to add our external IP address, our TLS profile, and we have to add an authentication here. We'll add the sequence in here, so let's change this. So okay, and now we'll drop down to the client list. We'll enable client list, add our IP address here for the external or the untrusted interface. Normally what should happen here is you should be adding the URL for, or the external URL for your portal/gateway. We'll assign it to the client list VPN zone, and then we'll assign it to our default proxy configuration. Likewise, for the lifetime, you have 3 hours and any inactivity for 30 minutes. You could adjust those as necessary. Max users for the portal, we'll just demonstrate inputting 10 here. Now we're going to add the apps that we're going to allow access to. And here we'll say admin apps or admin access. Let's do apps. And we'll say the admin apps group, and the users that we want to have access to this is going to be the GP admins, and we'll say OK. Now we'll end up adding another, and it's just going to be GP user, and we'll say only the GP users. And as you can see here, there's an option GP there's an option here to display application URL address bar. You could actually do a search from within the clientless SSL VPN, and we'll demonstrate using this in the admin profile, but we'll disable it for the user profile. We're only going to give them access to this applications group here called GP users, and we'll say OK. Our crypto settings, typically you want to set these to the highest, which is TLS 1.2. Depending on your browser configurations, you might need to lower this, but in this case we're going to exercise the highest level of encryption possible right now, and the one with the least amount of vulnerabilities. We do have proxy capabilities here if you need to use some of those configurations and some of the advanced settings where you can rewrite the URLs. So we'll say OK here. So what we did, we created an interface, we created a zone. We already had a DNS proxy, but we did modify the proxy settings to allow our Tunnel 1 configurations. We created a portal, clientless apps group, and clientless apps, just single. And then all that was done under the GlobalProtect configuration. Now we're going to jump over to objects, create a single tag, and then we'll wrap this thing up with the policies and the NAT rules that are necessary. So let's jump over to our objects, and we'll create a tag here. And the purpose of tags, you can create rules based on tags, but also I leverage some of these tags also for some visibility and some just quick associations between rule sets. So we'll make this chestnut color. So what it's going to do is going to take that zone and associate this color to that zone. We'll hop over to our NAT statement here, and we already have a default NAT going outbound. We'll walk through this real quick. As you can see, we have zones DMZ untrusted going to DMZ trusted going to untrusted, destination interface and service any. We're leveraging the dynamic IP import interface 1.1, and the IP address of that interface itself. So we'll go ahead and add our clientless to this, and we'll say OK. So now they're allowed to access out via the NAT. Now we have to create a security rule for our VPN traffic. So let's go here, VPN. And this is just an example. You might have to adjust your security rules depending on your security policy, but for the purpose of this is just to give you a practical idea of how this is configured. So we're saying anybody coming from VPN, from the VPN zone source to a destination of untrusted, and also we want to add trusted because we do have our web server that we're accessing. At the moment we'll do any, and application will do any, application any, and service any. Our action is going to be allow, and then we're going to log at end of session, and that's good for this. There we go. So now we'll commit. While this is committing, we're going to actually jump into our Windows 10 client. Let's move this over a little bit so we can kind of see it on the corner where it's at. We're going to fire up Edge. So we're getting a certificate error because it is a self-signed certificate, and we'll go on anyways. So we're going to log in with GP user 1. So as you can see, GP user 1, and we're going to test our configurations now. We're going to see if we can navigate to Google. And then we're also going to see if we can navigate to our internal web server. So we have successfully accessed our internal web server, and we have successfully accessed Google. And as you can see through the URL up here, the traffic is actually being proxied from the Palo Alto firewall in both instances. And this is our landing page for our client list. This is the application URL. You could actually type in a URL here. And I'm demonstrating accessing DuckDuckGo through that search. And we have hit the DuckDuckGo landing page from there. So now that we have that, we'll close these tabs out and we'll log in with our second user. And remember, this first user, GP user 1, was given the admin privileges, right? So now we'll log out and we'll log back in. GP user 2. Okay. So actually, let's close the browser, restart the browser. Looks like there was some caching done there. Okay. So as you can see, we only gave GP user 1 access to that Google app. So it's redirecting it only to that. And we didn't give it any search privileges or anything like that. So it's allowing that app itself to be proxied through there. So if we come here and actually add an additional app, let's say we're going to give them access also to DuckDuckGo. We'll go into that group, user, and we'll add DuckDuckGo to that user. Commit those changes. What we'll do, we'll close the browser, reinitialize the browser. Alright, so that says configuration is committed successfully. And we'll go here. We should get our login screen. GP user 2. So now you can see that we have 2 apps that we're able to access. One which is the DuckDuckGo app, and the other one which is the Google app itself. We'll continue to get these warnings until you download the certificate and install the certificate into your certificate store as a trusted CA. So there we go. We have successfully gone through this. So this is the clientless SSL VPN or TLS VPN capability for the Palo Alto networks. I trust that you are also looking for the full VPN capabilities. We have a follow-up video for demonstrating the full VPN capabilities that will build on everything that we did here. Thank you everyone for watching.